Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Mark is here with you for Arcadia Economics, and today I have a brief update on First Majestic Silver, as they did have their earnings for the second quarter out before the open today. And fortunately, they announced record financial results and also a quarterly dividend payment, as they have been doing for quite a while. And just wanted to walk you through the results and highlights here. Because to begin with, we have silver equivalent production up 48% year over year. Obviously, that includes the addition of Gatos Silver, which has been incorporated into the company. And you can see here they had 7.9 million silver equivalent ounces, including 3.7 million silver ounces, which is 48% higher than the 5.3 million silver equivalent ounces in the second quarter of 2024. In terms of revenue, that was up 94% year over year at a quarterly record of 264.2 million, of which 54% of that was from silver sales, and that was a 94% increase over the 136.2 million in revenue in the second quarter of 2024, with the two main factors being the 42% increase in the amount of silver equivalent that was sold, and also the 24% rise in the average silver price, in the average realized silver price over the quarter, which was up at 34.62. And of course, it's been a bit higher in the time since then. So, something to keep in mind, obviously, as you already start thinking about the third quarter earnings to some degree, although we'll stay focused on the second quarter here, where they also had higher mine operating earnings, up 33.9 million year over year. And the figure for the second quarter came in at 49.4 million versus 15.5 million in the second quarter 2024. And also, when you exclude non-cash depletion expenses, the mine operating earnings actually come in at $100.9 million. They also had EBITDA of $119.9 million, which was $98.7 million higher than the $21.2 million in the second quarter of 2022. Net earnings up $104.8 million year over year. Came in at 56.6 million on the quarter for an earnings per share of 11 cents. That was versus a net loss of 48.3 million last year, which was a loss of 17 cents in the second quarter of last year. And the big increase was obviously the higher mine operating earnings that we just talked about. And they did also benefit from a non-cash deferred income tax recovery of $39.6 million, which accounts for 8 cents per share of the total. And this was compared to a non-cash deferred income tax expense of 22.6 million last year, which contributed an 8-cent loss per share in that second quarter in 2024. They did incur higher G&A costs along with the integration of Gato Silver, although they do still expect to have significant synergies and cost reductions after the integration is complete. So certainly that's something to keep an eye on going forward, and we will keep you posted on in future updates. Continuing on though, adjusted net earnings up 38.8 million year over year, and they came in at 18.4 million in the second quarter, which contributed 4 cents of the EPS versus a loss of 20.4 million last year, which was a 7-cent loss in the second quarter of 2024. Cash flow from operations were up from 23.8 million last year up to 114.9 million, or 24 cents per share, an increase of 91.1 million year over year. Record free cash flow, obviously something that you always keep an eye on as a mining stock investor, and they had a quarterly record of 77.9 million in free cash flow after making a $30.6 million income tax payment. And that was compared to 6.4 million in free cash flow in the second quarter of last year. And they do mention here also that some of that free cash flow is going to be reinvested into exploration and development projects to enhance the grade and categorization of their resource estimate and also extend the life of mine across operations, which is something that mining companies are always having to do. And some of the free cash flow will go to that. They also had their treasury up to a record total of $510.1 million. And their overall liquidity was up to $583.8 million, which consists of $444.1 million of working capital and a $139.6 million undrawn revolving credit facility. And this excludes the $125.3 million held in restricted cash. Cash costs down 1% year over year. Had been at 15.29 second quarter of last year, down to 15.08. All-in sustaining costs down 3% year over year, and certainly those last two bullet points, some of the more important ones, as companies always trying to maintain and keep costs down. And that was something that Keith had talked about in the interview I did with him a couple months ago, or actually just last month, where they were expecting the combined entity post Gatos acquisition would help bring costs down. So that is great to see here. It went from 2164 last year to 2102 this year. And looks like they're also growing what's going on at the First Mint, where they had quarterly sales of 7.8 million versus 3.3 million in the second quarter of last year. And certainly, I know there are a lot of investors that really like when First Majestic goes direct to market and can see that their operation and success is growing there. They also did hold 424,272 silver ounces in finished good inventory as of June 30th, which was valued at 15.3 million and was not included in second quarter revenue. In terms of the ESG, the ISS ESG upgraded First Majestic to prime ESG investment status, recognizing their strong sustainability. And also, interesting note down here, they purchased and canceled an aggregate of 506,000 common shares at an average price of Canadian 7.94. And that's in addition to paying a quarterly dividend of 0.0048 per common share. And there are your second quarter earnings for First Majestic. Interesting reaction, only up 6 cents on the day, although that's within the context of silver being down 60 cents on the day. So, some great news from First Majestic. And obviously, I know we have a lot of First Majestic shareholders in our audience. So, hopefully, you found this one helpful. And just for a little more context, and especially some of the things on schedule going forward, did catch up with Keith last month at the Rick Rule Symposium. And to hear directly from him, well, just click on the video that's coming your way now.